Clint, I appreciate you hopping on. You are an East Texas guru. You know it inside and out. Is this a standard year for East Texas, or is it, like I think, a rather remarkable one?
I would think the latter. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. At the beginning of the year, I thought that this could be a down year for East Texas. The teams that got to the state championship game last year, Gilmer, Waskom, they were losing a ton of kids. Mineola, I thought, had a chance to get back, and they're still rolling along. But I was a little concerned that I might not be able to make a trip to Houston and come late December. But I'll tell you what, they've pleasantly surprised me these last couple of weeks in the playoffs, and it was a big week for sure last week.
They've looked excellent, and of course the headliner there is Carthage, that win over Navasota. I know from a statewide level there's a lot of surprise, a lot of shock and awe about Carthage knocking out Navasota, but from your perspective, as somebody who's seen them, as somebody who's watched them, were you surprised that they knocked off Navasota?
A little bit, but having seen them the first week in the playoffs against Bridge City, I knew that they had the capability of beating a team the caliber of Navasota. I just didn't know, if it would happen. Navasota's awfully good, as we all know. But the key for them has been reestablishing the running game. For most of the year, they've relied on the passing game with their quarterback, Jared Blissett. And when they've been at their best under head coach Scott Surratt, they've been able to really mix in the running game and really kind of put that pro-style offense to work with a good balance. And the last 2 weeks, they have a sophomore running back named Keontae Ingram who has really stepped up for them. I believe he has 365 rushing yards the last 2 weeks, and then those were against two undefeated teams in Stafford and Navasota. So now that they have the running game figured out, this is a very scary offense. And, if they can beat Navasota, they can beat anybody that's left in the field, that's for sure.
We were talking about that, about how with Navasota out, it seems like there's not that big bully on the block anymore. Would you say that Carthage has to be considered, if not the favorite, a favorite to come away with the 4A D1 title now?
I think you have to say that right now. I mean, I think you've got to also look at Liberty Ilo and Argyle up in Region 2. Those two teams are playing awfully well right now, and they're going to be meeting each other this week. Actually, that ought to be a great game. It was a fantastic game last year. But Carthage. If they can beat Navasota, obviously they can beat anybody that's left in 4A Division I. And they're a really complete football team right now. I know they gave up 48 points to Navasota, but that really didn't tell the story of how well their defense played. They forced a couple of big turnovers late in that game. They intercepted Shelton Epler twice. He had come into the game with just one interception on the year, I think, to 53 touchdown passes. So their defense is playing at a really high level right now. And as I mentioned before, with that added dimension in the backfield with Keontae Ingram, this is a very dangerous-looking Carthage team with their eyes set on another state championship.
He is Clint Buckley, the managing editor of ETSN, the East Texas Sports Network, joining us on DCTF Live. Get involved in the conversation, hashtag DCTF Live. Clint, the other squad that came away with a big win this weekend, and I thought a rather emphatic one, even if the scoreline doesn't indicate it, was Longview. They go to AT&T Stadium, and they really, from the word go, take it to Wiley. We know this is a Longview team with pedigree, but this is starting to look like those vintage Longview teams.
Yeah, and this is one of those teams that I didn't really expect a whole lot from once the playoffs started. It was a solid regular season. I mean, they were 8-2, but they had lost the district game, and that rarely happens under head coach John King. They lost to Marshall. But I'm telling you what, this is a very fun team to watch, at least from my perspective. I mean, they're not a flashy team. They're not going to, hang 50 points on anybody, but they control the clock. They run the football. They're very diversified in how they run the football. They've got several different backs that offer, varying styles of running. They've got the big bruisers. They've got the slashers. And their defense, while, undersized and maybe not as talented as some of the defenses they've had in the past, they're playing awfully well right now. And, They hold Wiley to just 14 points last week, and their passing game, which had been a really strong point for them for most of the year, really struggled. I think they only completed 6 of 26 passes. And it's been their pass rush that's really been the difference maker for that defense. And they've been getting it from just a 3-man rush. They haven't really had to bring any extra rushers, and when you can get good pressure on the quarterback with just 3 guys, that frees your the rest of your defenders up to play coverage, and that's really what's helped them in the playoffs.
One of the squads that, for all the success that East Texas had this weekend in the regional semifinals, one of the squads that bowed out was Marshall. Frisco Lone Star really took it to the Mavericks in this one. When you look back, when the season ends and you look back at this Marshall team, what is going to stand out to you about them?
Despite the way the season ended, I think they've kind of reemerged as an East Texas power. Third-year coach Clint Harper, who is a Marshall alum, he was a former quarterback at Marshall back, I guess, in the glory days of the 90s. He has really returned that program to prominence in this area. And, I mentioned they beat Longview this season. That was the first time they had done that. Their biggest rival since 2000. They were able to claim a piece of the district championship, and it was really tough to see the way their season ended against Lone Star. 56-7 was the final. Things may have been different if they had their starting quarterback, Justin Hart, who had been starting for them since he was a freshman. He got hurt. He hurt his knee midway through the district season, and they did a really good job to rally after the injury. But without him at quarterback, they had to use their star running back Cameron Haller in that position. And while he's a tremendous athlete, not having a quarterback as seasoned as Hart really took away the full capabilities of their offense. They weren't as aggressive downfield, passing the ball as they had been for most of the season. But Marshall's in great shape. They got a lot of young players that are coming back. Haller, who I just mentioned, is only a junior. He rushed for almost 2,000 yards this year. So things are looking up for Marshall despite the way their season ended the other day.
It's Clint Buckley of ETSN.FM. Check out his fine work there and follow him on Twitter at Clint Buckley. One last question for you, Clint, before we let you go. 2 of the East Texas squads that took home state championships last year are still alive, despite, as you mentioned, having to do some reloading. Who have you been more impressed with between Gilmer and Waskom?
That's really tough. If I had to choose, I would say Waskom, simply because they're a smaller school, and when turnover hits with graduation, it's always tougher on the smaller schools because there's obviously a lot less players to choose from. But they have been just about as dominant as they were a season ago. They haven't lost in 28 games. They took out a one district opponent last week in a rematch, ARP, and they've got another one this week with West Rusk. Both of those teams they handled quite well during the regular season, and I expect Waskom to keep on rolling. Gilmer had a kind of a scare in the first round. They turned the ball over, I think, 7 times and were able to survive that. But since then they've played really well, and they've got a rematch with Atlanta this week, which I think that they're in position to win and advance on, and then we'll see from there. But I think Waskom, this may be the most impressive job of coaching anywhere in the region with what Whitney Keeling has done with those guys this season.
He is Clint Buckley. He is the managing editor of ETSN, East Texas Sports Network. See his fine work at ETSN.FM and follow him on Twitter at Clint Buckley. Clint, appreciate you hopping on with us, bud.
All right, anytime, Greg. You take it easy.
There he goes, Clint Buckley of ETSN, talking all things #Beast Texas.